Yeah, I'm gonna wait for the stream to catch up, and I'm still seeing Rick on Twitch.
Okay,
We're
so I
coming,
am
stopped on
broadcasting
YouTube
again.
Yeah, I see a CoCoTALK logo. Is that from Mark?
Okay, now we're back to
There we go. I see.
Zoom call.
Okay.
Yeah, I see a CoCoTALK logo. Is that from Mark?
Okay, now we're back.
And I just heard myself, so I think we're back up.
So it appears we need to work on our disaster backup processes a little more.
Yeah, well, we got the disaster part down great. It's
I think I figured out how
the
to
recovery
switch over
part.
to
That's the
sharing
problem.
We were here, the audience left.
I may have found the way to share the Zoom call, to share the screen. If you have the Zoom call on one screen, I think I could share that from Restream.
Yeah, there's an issue when you do that with feedback loops in the audio.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of have to run the CoCoTalk Zoom in one thing and your personal Zoom in another thing, and then you can get away with that. But we haven't really got to test and iron that out yet.
So, Mark, you're on generator right now?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's quit wasting your gasoline on just bantering.
That's all right.
back
That
and
gas
forth.
has been
We'll
in there
solve
for two. It's been in there for 2 years. It needs to get used. I could put some fresh gas in it, you know.
There you go. CoCoTALk. We're full of old gas.
Yeah. So it
Bunch
looks
of
like we have a
gassy
new
old
stream
men.
on
That's what we're going to call
YouTube.
ourselves now.
This show is brought to you by Exxon.
Looks like the current stream is showing Curtis's desktop. So I guess we're back live again.
Yeah, I see it on Twitch. Okay, do you see it on YouTube there, Mark?
I see it on YouTube also.
Okay. I don't know if we've got any viewers left because they might have given up on us, but
There's still 8 in.
It says 11.
Kevin
on
Holloway
the-
says, I see and hear you again. Okay, thanks, Kevin. I think I'll continue. So I don't know if we want to add anything more to the OS9, whether it was good or bad at times thing. Obviously, there's a bit of a differing opinion even on the Coco crew itself. Obviously, a little bit of differing opinion, I think, on chatters and stuff here. But it was an interesting topic to talk about. I'm going to send some feedback to them, my thoughts on it, so maybe that'll appear on their next show. Anyway, we'll continue on. So next up, this isn't technically a news story, but I thought it was pretty interesting, and I want to get some feedback from people in the chat and people on the panel here. So Carlos Camacho put up about 10%, as he said, of his book collection of Coco and Dragon-based books. And he's got a few rare titles and a few titles I've never even seen before. And several different pictures of them here. So some of these are, of course, the actual manuals for the Cocos themselves. The Tier City Color Basic. Your Color Computer by Doug Mosher is one I actually own myself. But there's like programming stuff, there's graphic books, there's all kinds of stuff on here. And then he's got a few more on a later picture. For some reason, it's not letting me close. Way to go, Facebook. Well, anyway, from this shot here, he's got some of the Rainbow books for simulations and adventures and some general programming ones, etc. How many third-party books, non-Radio Shack, did you guys have? And do you recognize some of the ones here?
Yeah, I recognize many of them.
Well, of course you would, Brian.
I like color, COULEUR.
Yeah,
That's gotta
those
be French.
the orange and the pink book to the left of Your Color Computer. I haven't seen those before. Those are kind of unique.
Yeah,
there's
the COULEUR, is that French or Spanish? I'm not sure. But
Must be Calais or something. Who knows?
Gibberish.
My French was 40 plus years ago.
Okay. But just like first editions of the Rainbow Book of Simulation and Adventures, a lot of little programming guides, etc. Tier City Computer Programmer's Handbook. That's not one I've seen, even though it's from Radio Shack. Graphics, you can see a little bit of Don and Kurt Inman's assembly language graphics, etc.
You appear in one of the simulation books.
Yep, and one of the adventure books too.
Okay.
And Facebook's not letting me switch. Okay, well, anyway, if you go on the Color Computer Facebook group, he's got a ton. He's also got a set of Dragon books as well. So he posted that in the Dragon group as well. But he's got multiple pictures of Coco books. This is only the first of several. And he even described these as being only 10% of his collection. So I can just imagine what all he has. But he's got a few that I've never seen before, which is cool. It also kind of shows that the Coco was, I think, more popular than a lot of people give it credit to be, because you wouldn't have all these third-party publishers making dozens and dozens of, tier city color computer dedicated books if it wasn't that popular of a platform. Next up, another Septandy one. And this is, I think, Jamie's Hack Shack on YouTube. And this is a follow-up video because he did one earlier on as well. And he just acquired an MC10 at VCF Midwest. So this is a follow-up to that, where he actually gets home and he was trying to get some programs running on it. So he grabbed out an old MP3 player, and he figured out that you can actually use a Commodore cable for the cassette port. Now, the cables aren't attached to the same pins on the DIN, but he actually can just use it with very slight modifications. I actually got it up and running here, so I'll just play a little clip of that, but you can check the whole thing.
You take the video out, yellow
port, to figure out what was the audio in, and then basically I took my multimeter here just to verify, put it on the connectivity, or the mode where it'll verify if you've got a connection, and it beeps, right? So I got on my pin here, which is the audio in, I believe, and started probing around to see if I could find a match. That matches this. And the audio ground.
And Alan, that's what you were mentioning about the fact the yellow cable becomes the equivalent of the black cable on the cassette.
I use my Commodore video cable, video audio to do the Dragon. You just have to switch the two and it works great.
Yeah, so that's a cool feature, because I know cassette cables not everybody has those or has access to them, and then you just plug it into an MP3 player and you can download the WAVs. There's utilities in the MC10 to convert the C10 data files to WAV format. Creates the audio version of it, so you can actually load those too. And of course, if you really want to get a heavy in the MC10, you'll probably just get Ed's, STC 32X or whatever that gets called, that has the the virtual SD card disk drive add-on as well as 32K RAM. So that was another one of the Septandy ones. So that was pretty cool. And he actually ends up playing a basic version of Breakout as a test. Next up, and I'll play the whole thing of this. It's a minute and a half. And this is a Dragon story. So Quantum Sticks on YouTube released a video showing him getting a Dragon 32 to run from a USB power supply, and it only takes half the power of the original power brick and runs fine. So I'll let him kind of explain what's going on in here.
Okay, very quickly, Philips 8833 monitor. We have got a power meter, which is going through this contraption. We've rigged up the socket. The socket powers the Dragon Data power supply, USB power supply, into a Dragon Plus board powered by USB. That's that one there. See it coming around up to the top. And at the bottom, we've got the Dragon Data, both going into the Philips. So if we turn on the Dragon Data, turn the Dragon on there, and the screens come on. You can see it's doing that, and it is taking 16 watts, 0.1 amps. So 16 watts of power on the Dragon Data. Come back and turn that off. I'll do this live, it's a bit, bear with me a second. Okay, we're plugged into the USB and the Dragon Plus board. Turning that on. Oh, well, turn it on. And you can see it's turned on there. So that's now running. You can see the lights inside it. And that is taking half the power, which is pretty impressive. I mean, the pitch is terrible from these. Somebody needs to do an RGB board. But there you go. Dragon 32 running off USB and taking half the power it takes to run off a Dragon Data power supply.
That was a pretty cool project. I don't know if there's an equivalent of that on the Coco side, or that's just because of the way the Dragon's power supply works. So for you people that are hardware experts, please explain to me.
Well, linear supplies, blue, most of the power is heat. And modern switching supplies just don't use power that they don't need. So yeah, that missing 8 watts is the heat that comes out of the linear supply that's normally in a Dragon.
So this would be applicable to an NTSC based Coco then as well.
Exactly, or any switching supply to put the 5 volts into a Coco.
Because I do remember somebody at Tandy Assembly a year or two ago actually did have a Coco 2 hooked up to, or maybe it was a Coco 3, hooked up to a USB power supply themselves. And I thought that was just an alternate way if you couldn't get power supply parts for the old 40-year-old power supply. But it sounds like there's actually better advantages to it.
In the old days, to do like a 12-volt, 1-amp supply was a big chunk of transformer that was heavy. It probably weighed 4 pounds. And that's what it took. And it threw extra heat out to get the voltage down to a regulated 12 volts, and it was just a mess. And now it's a half an ounce of silicon and a capacitor, and you're done. So, yeah, any power supply replacement is better than what is there now.
So Ken, like to follow up your 609 video to make the Coco run cooler, even a Coco 1 or 2 case using a 609 with 1/10 the power, you can swap it in a USB power supply and cut the entire power in half on top of that. So it'll be running, you can almost cool your drinks on it at that point, I would guess.
There you go.
Right, but the only thing it's and you're going to be able to play games and do all that other stuff, but you're not going to have your plus and minus 12 volts though with that.
You
but
won't have your cassette port and stuff.
That's the only reason why you need it. So if you're just doing TTL logic and just using the Coco for that, a USB power supply would be perfectly fine.
Well, Coco 2 and a Coco 3 doesn't have a plus and minus 12 volts.
Internally, it has a 8 volt, I think it is, to throw the swings far enough on the joystick port and so forth. So it needs a little bit more. It needs a little AC to make them extra voltages. You can do it. It's not as simple as just hook up 5 volts and you're done. That'll run the computer, but it won't run the joysticks and stuff. But yeah, you can do it.
Okay, so there's still some things you have to worry about. But in general, if you do have a few other tweaks, you can definitely run much lower power.
Pedro could tell you all about it. Pedro Pena has done all kinds of stuff with his salt chip and so forth. So
yeah, Alan's been mentioning in the chat here about that Pedro has done some of that stuff, including with the salt, which is the one that kind of controls the joysticks and some of that stuff, if I remember correctly.
Every analog thing in the Coco, the salt takes care of. So,
and I know Pedro was in the chat when we first began, but he had to leave. So, Alan, any comments on that yourself, or is Alan still on the call? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I'm here. There was a big long discussion about a lot of that in the hardware channel in the Discord a couple of weeks ago. And it was Mr. Dave, Pedro Pena, and a couple of other folks were in there doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the salt replacement.
Yeah, which Pedro's been working on for a while. So cool. This stuff's way above my pay grade, so I'm glad you guys are on here to discuss it properly.
Oh, and those switches in that power supply, those aren't just a good idea. They're the law. You have to have switched outlets in various countries, and this is one of them.
Also, I don't have a link for it specifically here, but it's in the chat. But the Amigos Retro Gaming is having an International Computer Club meeting tonight, and there's a bunch of projects from various people that are part of their fan base, and Alan and Ken and a few others that are in their Discord probably know about all this already. They just actually started not too long ago. I think the pre-broadcast stream, and it'll be running for probably a couple of hours. Nick and I have both been on it before to present stuff on Coco stuff. I don't think anybody's doing Coco stuff in particular today. I didn't have everything ready, and Nick wasn't.
for Zoom and everything, and I'm just gonna see if I can. The show.